This is building a saddle rack part 2. Now we're back to using the Bauer saw, and we're cutting these angles. What I do is I measure off 4 inches. I put my little tick line down here, and I will demonstrate that. And then I use this machinist protractor. And yes, this is from Harbor Freight. I'll set it on this side right here so that I get my 65 degree angle cut every 4 inches. When I measure off my distance, I normally do 6 at a time because one side is 6. I need a total of 12 for each side, and it takes a matter of minutes. When I cut through, and I'll film that, I'll start on the edge, and it's a little bumpy, and once I get through, I'll very carefully slice down the pencil line that I have here and the pencil line that I've drawn here, and I'll work that through. I'll cut the top first and then cut the bottom. I tried cutting evenly all the way through the thing, and what would end up happening is it would sometimes try to twist in here. My setup is nothing fancy. I'm on my work table. The vise is holding my piece of angle iron, and believe it or not, to get the proper angle will determine which one of these two sides is up, and I'll explain why in just a minute. This is my nifty, thrifty stand holder for my welder, or my welded piece. It's adjustable using this screw. It's very similar. In fact, the adjustable jacks that I use for setting piers is based on this same principle, except that there's a hook on the bottom of it. Now let's look at the angle piece. My angle piece is cut to fit. I have an arrow on it to make sure that I know which is the correct orientation. It will come over here and it will sit on here just like this. And you see there's the hole there, and this piece, maybe I can show you on this side with a little more light. See, the piece will be right up there against it, and everything is good. Nice fit on there. Now I have one that's a little wonky, which will require a little bit of effort to fill in the gap, but otherwise everything's good. The red paint that you see down there is a rust inhibiting. Also, it takes the rust that may be in something and it removes it. If you look right here, I have some rust, and I'm going to have to get all that rust out of there, use a wire brush, then some navel jelly, then clean all this out, and then I'll come back and I'll paint it with this red stuff, and then I'll do the rest of the stuff with the gray primer, and then I'll be painting all of this to this nice pretty white color right here. And the reason for that is to assist in helping to keep the ranch tack room looking pretty nice. They'll be able to wipe this down from time to time, and you'll have a nice clean look to it. I was thinking about going with a flat, not a flat, but a high gloss black, and the reason I decided not to do that is I was concerned that insects looking for a place to hide would gravitate over towards it, because it is going to be in a room that may or may not have a lot of light in it. So if it's got some light, this would be a darker place. Insects look for some place to set a web. As I've discussed before, spiders that make webs in the dark reflect UV. Spiders that make a web in the light absorb UV. So the insect's either looking for light or it's looking for darkness to hide, and that's how the spiders catch their little critters. So the next part of this, moving back over here for a minute, the next part of this will be to get rid of the sharp edges on this distal end right down here, And once I've done all my pieces, I'll come back. I will grind all this, not grind, but I'll remove the scale from this, and then we'll start welding these on. And I anticipate that I should have most of these cut and finished today. So let's make that happen. As I stated, normally I do 24 inches, but since this is strictly a demonstration to show you how I'm doing it, we're only going to make one right at this time, and then we'll make the rest of them. This is called a Silver Streak Welder's pencil. It's great for marking metal. It will not burn off. All right, there's my line. I use my speed square or tri-square to draw my line. There we go. Put my line on here like so. I need to sharpen my pencil, that's the problem. There's my line. What this line gives me is it gives me my horizontal. I now get my diagonal, 65 degrees. There's my line. My diagonal comes across here and then here. Then the saw. By the way, there's quite a little gap in this thing, so you have to really kind of hang on to it because we're not making a square cut. And it helps if it's turned on. Okay. We have power. So we start it running and we ease into it real slow. Again, I cut along the top a little bit to make sure I have the right angle. Having the right angle, I now start cutting down through the side. Alright, I've cut through the top. Let the saw do the work. And there we go. This doesn't have to be super precise. Now we got to figure out which end is up. This end is up. On those others I put a yellow dot, but I haven't got that far yet. This would be the upside right here. I flip this over like so. I set this on here and I put a mark on the 1 inch. And I put a mark on the 3 inch. Come back and make them a little darker so I can see them. Then, what I've done here is I bored 2 holes in this angle iron, put a nut and a washer on the back side, and I tied it down so that all of my stuff will be evenly spaced. Then I come back here and then using one of these multiple drills, I drill down through the thing till I get to my 1/4 inch. I have my hole drilled in it, pop it up, just slide it down, drill my second set, or my second hole. Now everything that I'm building is going to be very uniformed in size. When I cut my boards, I can pre-drill my boards. I know everything's going to align perfectly because I have a margin up here and I have my preset holes exactly the same distance apart. And so I can fashion all this stuff much quicker that way. All right, that's that aspect of it. When I'm marking these things, I have them all drawn out, set them here, make my marking at the 1st inch and the 3rd inch, set it aside, go to the next one. I've done all of them that I need to do for one side of the saddle racks. Now we're going to drill them. Between runs, I turn it off, I remove this, I brush the scrapings off, I wear gloves. Don't do this without gloves, you'll hurt yourself, or use a brush, compressed air, or something. I turn it off, I'll set this to the side, and we know that this one will fit on here like this. My holes are drilled. I'll come back and I'll clean this up with a grinder, just go over it real quick, and once I've got the burrs off of it, then I'll be ready to weld it on after I smooth this off so I don't have any sharp edges. So now I've got 23 more of these to go and I'll be done. The vise is not tight and I'm going to be going across at a perpendicular angle to the axis so that I can get the burrs off of it, and I'll do 2 of those, show you what I'm doing. Okay, I did more than 2, but you can see that I'm able to just drop them in, and because I'm going at a perpendicular angle to this axis, I don't need to clamp this down, and I can knock out these 24 that I've got to do very, very quickly, and then I'll be ready to change the rock that's on the angle grinder to the soft pad for removing paint and scale, mill scale, and I'll be ready to start welding these up. What we're about to do is take the buffing pad, remove the mill scale, the paint, and get this ready to be painted. Once this is welded on, and this is a critical part here, once this is welded on, then we will be ready to put this together. Removing mill scale part 2. What I'm getting ready to do is remove the mill scale and any paint that's on this and get this ready to go. Now my holes tell me that the orientation is to the top, so I'm no longer worried about paint on this side. The underside is going to be cleaned a little bit of mill scale. It's going to be brushed, and then I'm going to clean it with navel jelly, and at that point then it will be welded on. So let's make this happen real quick. As you can see, it happens quite fast. You can barely see the lines. This is the silver streak. Now, I can see it clearly, but the camera doesn't seem to pick it up all that well unless I shadow it or reflect some light in there. Who knows what I'm doing. This piece will fit on here like so, and I made this black line so that you can see that one more clearly. When I get ready to tack this up, I'll set the top piece, the top margin here with that, and align my horizontal with this down line, which I can clearly see right here. I'll tack it on these three corners. I'll come back, I'll remove all the slag, scrub it up good with a brush after I break the slag, and then the next thing I'll do is I'll come back and I will run a bead across the top, and then after I do that, then I'm going to come back and I'll do the inside of this, which I have yet to clean up. You can see it's pretty dirty. It's got to be, this has to be cleaned up so that I can weld this into place. Then I'll come back, I'll put a good bead in here, I'll come back and I'll put a weave, and I'll determine if I need a weave here or if just a second real good bead here will do. I'll have to figure that out once I get this into place. But I will definitely put a bit of a weave on the inside. So the next thing is to clean up this scale right here on this piece. Right here, clean this up. Leave the rest of this alone, and I'll be grinding this off in just a moment to get rid of these sharp edges. What we have now is these are the two for one side, and these are the two for the other side, and we have all 12 of them welded on. I was trying to use 60-13s, which is fine for what I'm doing. You know, 60,000 pounds will easily hold a 50-pound saddle. The electrodes that I bought, they're Lincoln electrodes. They are good electrodes. They are my first choice when I'm buying electrodes at a store. Unfortunately, these had been subjected to humidity. They weren't burning properly. So I switched to Lincoln electrodes, 70-18s, and I got all this welded out. Now, as we look at this, you're going to notice that the bottom rung right down here has not been primed yet. The reason for that is my pad has run out. It's getting close to dark. I don't have time to change the pad and get this painted before it becomes nighttime. So I'm going to call this quits, but I've got everything else primed, so it's good. And what I'll do is I will give the top two pieces, these right here, a quick coat of this white epoxy. And granted, I'm going to get a few rust spots. I'll grind those out later and redo them. But for now, we're going to call this quits. And as you can see, we have a position here now for a total of 6 saddles. And we'll be doing this until we get the other 3 completed. The last 2 are going to be kind of unique, and I'll be showing you that a bit later. But again, it's getting close to dark. I want to get this primed, or it is primed. I want to get this painted, what I have primed, so it won't rust. And we'll put this into building a saddle rack part 3. That said, dysfunctional vet out.